I want to start doing these just to get the pressure out of me. Excuse me. Just to get the pressure out of me. And to sort of clear the air about me. I don't just want to sit around and sit in these hardships and struggles that I'm going through and just ruminate on them. So I figured something like doing this will help me to sort of clean the air, release the pressure, talking about it, instead of just holding it all in and feeling my heart pounding and getting stressed and all that. So if it at least does that much, it's got to have some kind of worth, I figure. But, at this point in my life, I don't make any money. I don't have any income, even though I, apply for job after job after job and things like that. And, well, at least about a week from now, I'll have my first, I guess you could say, resume-worthy job. Well, maybe not resume-worthy. The first kind of job, excuse me. The first job you do when you kind of think of a job. You go out and you do that sort of 9 to 5 and then you come back home thing. I've worked before. I've done a lot of work. It just wasn't paid. Unfortunately. Didn't make any money from it. No way to make a living from it. But, the main thing I really wanted to sort of get off my chest and just talk about is just the sort of context around it, the circumstances. Up until recently, I had never set boundaries. I had never set a limit on what I was willing to take on. It got to the point where the person I'm living with completely took advantage of my goodwill and my ability to function, my generosity. I started to realize that the person I was with has a lot of narcissistic behavior. Probably really is. So every time I do even a little bit of research, from the lightest thing to the most in-depth thing, it really started to get me down just how much applied. Just every step. And there was this thing I saw today that got me discouraged for a second. Just let me see if I can find it. I wrote it down. Sorry if you can hear a sound in the background. Those are my cats playing around and doing their thing. But what was it? Right. I saw this thing today, and it was people talking about how much the term narcissism has been degraded and how much it gets overused and passed around for even things that have nothing to do with being a narcissist, just someone being unpleasant or, just not being nice or just being a jerk or, being selfish or being inconsiderate, things that you may not like or maybe other problems but aren't really narcissism or anything like that. And I kept thinking to myself, has that cried wolf-like effect where, what if I'm just, no one believes me? What if I'm just making it all up? And then I had to sort of take a look at everything I had been through and realize that even though I know what I'm going through, I guess it shouldn't be the sole thing. It's like giving it that label, but that's not enough to convince people or anything like that. Not that I want to convince anyone, but just thinking about it hypothetically. Showing the actions, even without the label. Showing having the evidence, knowing what the person has done, and being able to say what the effects have been. It's like, come on, you. Down you go. It's like saying the definition of the word, saying all the little blurbs that they put under the definitions of the word as examples for how to use the word in a sentence, but then never actually saying the word. So when I saw that title, and I'll read it here, it says, "Can it actually be harmful to think someone in your life is a narcissist when they actually aren't?" And yes, I do think that is true. But when I see things like that, it makes me worried how people will treat other people who really are going through those kinds of situations, or they don't have the money or the time to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist or whoever you get to make a medical label for those kinds of things. But you've been sitting through it. You've been through it. It's happened so much at this point that you know what it is you're going through. And sometimes just finding the word and realizing that there is something that everything you have been going through, it's all there. It's being defined. It's being defined right in front of you. And so it's understandable that words like narcissist gets abused, or there's sort of lists of pop psychology, and then you just take anything that I do and you say it's narcissism, that kind of thing. Like, no matter what I do, you'll say that I'm a narcissist. And that kind of thing is, I guess I have to realize that the experience I'm going through, even though it is all that I have been through, it is not the majority experience of what people have gone through. And when you take something that's very real like that and start applying it to everything, and you don't even know that people are doing that, even though it's all I've experienced, for most people they haven't. And so terms get passed around, taken completely out of context, that majority of people won't understand what it means, or what it really entails, or what it really looks like. So while I think it's true that if you start treating somebody like they're a narcissist, even though you don't really know what that means or what that entails, and you start treating them like that, even though you're not exactly sure, or you're misunderstanding what it is, and then you go and look up, well, how do you deal with narcissists? And then you start treating them like that, and suddenly you're really messing with someone. But at the same time, and at the same time, that doesn't invalidate those people who really do have to behave like that because they are around a narcissist. And for a second, I faltered seeing that. And I started wondering if I was, as I mentioned at the start, I started wondering if I was just making things up, or like, is this my fault? Am I making this person like this? And I had to stop for a second and think to myself, like, no, this is the pattern. This was here far longer before I started finding safer and more mature ways to react to what was happening to me. This has always been around. It's always been there. And the effects of it have always been there. With or without the word that goes to the example sentences, or the definition. And I can understand that when you when you label what you're going through, when you label what you're seeing, it can make you ignore nuance. And things like that. But at the same time, finding what it is, that sort of crystallization of everything that you're going through, is what, at least for me, it's what helps me to separate it from myself, that all of the blame and other person's responsibilities, managing emotions, having to hold up for two people, that it wasn't me doing that. It helps me to be able to fully separate myself from the other person's actions, if that makes sense. And I saw something, it was something that said you don't need a diagnosis to justify why something felt wrong, or a label to validate your pain, or permission to protect yourself. And that is true. And I think there's a point where enough things add up, though, to where you can, for your own mental state, for your own clarity, say what this is. I guess the closest example is seeing all the evidence of something, like I'll look at one of my cats here, like, it's kind of like saying that you can't call it a cat, but what you can do is you can say, I'm looking at something with pointed ears and a long tail, fur, sharp almond-shaped eyes, a short snout, sharp teeth, 4 legs, feline appearance, small size, meows, goes into a litter box, eats cat food, has a triangular nose, likes to knead on blankets, chase laser pointers. You know, all these things, there comes a point where, when are you just circling around what something is? I don't know. I really don't know. I don't have the answer to that question right now. My mind and my body are telling me that something is off. And I listened to it, and I looked further, and then I realized that there really is something off. And then that became something of a realization, and something clearer as to what's happening. Even now, the stress of it all, and the anxiety, leaves my body in some kind of soreness and pain, this dizziness whenever I stop working or doing something and just sit down for a moment. I wrote down a list of just a few of the things that I've experienced. And this isn't even the full list. This is just what I could remember off the top of my head right now. I have more written down elsewhere, but just off the top of my head, there's the passing of responsibility, weaponizing gifts and interests, hijacking conversations in order to make it about oneself, denial, reality warping, shifting blame, retaliation for boundaries, self victimization, guilt tripping, grandiosity, lack of empathy, active threats, love bombing, active personal attacks and insults disguised as venting, emotional manipulation, escalating hostility if not complied to, desire for control, and constantly trying to enforce some kind of dominance hierarchy in which only the one person's needs are prioritized and the other person is tried to be made to self-sacrifice everything in pursuit of that. There's a lot more detail behind a lot of these, but I don't think I want to go into explaining them right now, but these aren't just things I pulled off a list. These are things that have happened to me. Yeah, withholding attention or care if not complied, the person having low self-esteem, but at the same time having a big sense of self-importance. Yeah. On that withholding thing now, it's gotten to the point where that person acted on one thing. That's the thing that always gets me, is the person will suddenly start guilt tripping, saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then they never act on it. Start saying all kinds of things like, I'm going to leave you, to that effect. I'm going to leave you, I'm going to, you don't deserve me, or things like that. You're the one pushing me out, that kind of thing. And I won't get too detailed on that right now, but and I know I got to that point where I had managed to separate from the person enough and set enough boundaries that this person I'm talking about started doing that, started making those threats, and it really got to the point where I wished that person wasn't just guilt tripping or trying to make themselves the victim of the situation. Because when I imagined the person going and being alone, I could imagine a life without all of that pain and anguish, and I could feel freedom. Just a few months ago, for the first time in my life, I felt for the first time what it would be like to be free and not constantly monitoring every conversation for what the person is saying or trying to do, not having to withhold my interest or speaking on anything that I enjoy out of fear that it would be used against me later, or weaponized, or completely ignored, neglected, or hijacked. the moment that this person I'm talking about disowned me and all of my pets, my cats as well, told us that we weren't family anymore and that she didn't want us and that we were a failed project, that our family was a failed project and she was disbanding it and disowning us and just saying, go live wherever you want. Why don't you take a vacation and just stay there? I wasn't sad. Or I was sad, but I wasn't hurt in the way I thought it would be. Yes, it was sad to have those words finally coming out into reality and being said, but instead, what I felt was this intense feeling of release, like all the tension was gone. Like after all this time, I didn't have to wonder anymore when this person was going to finally say, I don't really love you or care about you. I'm ready to abandon you or let you go. And I felt free. I felt this weight come off my shoulders, like I was lifted up for that moment. I could imagine a future where I could breathe and think and no longer have to be in survival, waiting till that person is gone or asleep to be able to calm down or be creative. And the greatest anguish I felt was when I realized I couldn't leave. There was nowhere to take me and I couldn't go. That feeling of not knowing you've had a cold for your whole life, and then suddenly feeling what it's like to be without it, and then being sunk back under, knowing that you have no choice but to stay with someone that wants you gone. There's nothing there anymore. I tasted that freedom for a second, and ever since then it's practically all I can think about. How close the future was to changing, how close I was to being safe or having this safety I could only dream about or taste for only a few seconds. For the first time in my life, I could feel it. It was right in front of me. And I wanted it so badly. But it faded away. And I knew I couldn't expect anyone to take me or anything like that. Everyone's living their own lives with their own infinite amount of complications and worries and struggles and family dynamics. And I felt so utterly helpless, but hopeful at the same time. I know I got sidetracked from what I was talking about earlier. That person has, to some relief, acted on one of those things that they said, and they just started packing up all their stuff and moving it out to a storage unit, and has effectively just left me here alone by myself with these 5 cats. I know if I left these little guys with this person that they would immediately give them up for adoption without a second thought. That person's told me as much. Now I've been left alone, and the security almost feels tempting to just stay here. But I know it's not safe to stay here, that this is only temporary, and I'm still stuck in something that someone else is very willing to manipulate the ground underneath me. And the way my life has been set up until now, the person made it so that my entire life revolved around their codependency on me. Me regulating their emotions, me taking care of all their responsibilities, taking on the weight of everything, while this person came up with every reason to make sure that I never had time or means, or in their mind any justification to try and be independent or take my own responsibilities or have to prioritize my own responsibilities. But the moment I needed to set a boundary, the moment I had to finally say, I can't take care of all this setup for you, I can't make sure that your life functions for you anymore, then the person was suddenly like, when are you going to get a job? When are you going to get money to support yourself? You don't even need me, do you? You know, that kind of thing. Well, the funny part is I was already doing that anyway. But for the other person, it was never really about that. It was just the person realizing I'm not convenient anymore. That I'm not there to give them a struggle-free life. It got to the point where I was exhausted by the time I got to anything that I needed to do. 3 in the morning, couldn't even keep my eyes awake, and all that person needed to do anymore was come home, go to sleep. That's it. Never had to lift any other finger. And the person completely structured their life around this setup. And of course, when I can't do that anymore, it inconveniences the person to have to figure out what they're going to do. And of course, that person then tries to put the guilt on you, or on me, I guess. Don't want to project on anyone else, but put that guilt on me, You're ruining our lives, the stability. You're the one ruining the stability of our lives. You're making things complicated. Why are you making things a struggle? And then I had to think about it. Of course I'm messing up that lifestyle. This entire lifestyle was built around this system in which I had to be the foundation for most of it. I'm talking about in shared experience, but in terms of her experience and I was supposed to keep saying they. Now I've said something more specific. My apologies. I'll return to saying they, but I guess if you heard that, you heard it. I don't have the energy to edit it out. But, they structured their entire lifestyle on what they were getting me to do. Not only was their shared lifestyle mostly structured on top of me, but they structured their whole lifestyle on what they could get me to do. And now I've been left alone in this home. Don't have a job. Don't have any money of my own. Don't have a car. Don't even have a license or transportation. The car I would have been able to drive, I got wrecked in a car accident, so that's gone. That person is the only one with a vehicle now. Today I called shelters and churches and referrals. I had this thought in my mind the entire time, this sort of wishful thinking, that I wish that there was someone who could save me, someone who could just appear and take me away from all of this, that I could find somewhere to restart. If I got another chance. I still gotta do my own actions, So today I called, as I just said, churches and referrals and things like that. I called and I tried to find options for shelters or homes, temporary. I don't know how to ask my neighbors. That's the thing, is since I was young, that person's been making sure to isolate us and to teach us to stay isolated. That asking for help is evil. Going to neighbors is bad. You're a traitor if you go to anyone else. And I guess I accidentally forgot to mention it earlier, but also, that sort of thing of, I'll give you everything, complete ease, as long as you don't, as long as you stay exactly where I want you. It's so depressing. This isn't, it's not worth it just to not be alone. When another person makes it clear through their choices that you're going to have to be alone now. There's no fixing it. It's not that you didn't want to be together or a family or anything like that, but you just can't. It's not a family anymore. It never was. You look back on it and you realize that that person was never really there the entire time. Oh man. I lost my train of thought. Let me think. But, hold on, I gotta think back on what I was saying. I guess I'll go back to the part where I was talking. Yeah, referrals and homes and shelters and things like that. Yeah, just looking. Made those calls today. That part was really the part that stressed me out the most. Trying to figure out what So I can't let these little cats go. These little guys are my family. They're the only family I have. Trying to find shelter that'll take pets and cats and accept someone who has no car, no money. Just chasing that feeling of freedom. But even after all my calls, though, those stressed me out the most today. I had to take like little 10-minute breaks in between to calm my nerves in between each call. And unfortunately, they didn't lead to much besides more referrals or, nice people telling me they'll send a message to someone who will get back to me later. So I had a lot more time to think after that. And I guess the thing I want to end on is this thing I thought about, which was how when you're dealing with someone who's a narcissist and at the same time trying to be a person who you would want to be if you were in a healthy relationship. The struggle is that you can't be that 100% person you would be if you were in a healthy relationship. But there's this paradox where the fear you feel, the fear I felt in the relationship that I have, created this sort of distorted mirror version of the kind of healthy person I want to be. This distorted copy, it's a mimic that's so close it can fool you. And I wrote down this list. The true character qualities, the person you want to be: warmth, generosity, patience, openness, honesty, loyalty. But all of those things a narcissist will end up exploiting or trying to use against you or taking to their advantage. And that's where you have to set boundaries. And in a fear-based relationship, you get this mirror version that sort of takes the same raw materials and basis as the real person you want to be, and it hijacks them. So even when I do a boundary, my fear because a narcissistic person tries to take advantage of your kindness or openness or loyalty, empathy, and tries to use them for their own means, their own gains. And then you become afraid of what happens if you don't do that. And so you're left with this shadow copy that when you have to hold back those things and set a boundary with the person, that shadow version kind of fills in the gap and tries to force you to do the fear-based, distorted version. And I wrote a list here. It's what you really want to be versus the fear-driven version. On one side you have kindness, on the other side you have appeasement. On one side you have empathy, on the other side you have hypervigilance, hyper-attunement, hyper-conflict avoidance, hyper-avoiding conflict. On one side you have patience, and on the other side you have tolerating mistreatment. On one side you have loyalty, on the other side you have self-abandonment. On one side you have openness, and on the other side you have oversharing to prevent anger. On one side you have honesty, and on the other side you have walking on eggshells. to avoid wrong truths, quote unquote wrong truths, ones that are inconvenient or don't fit what the other person wants. And on one side you have generosity, and on the other side you have overgiving in order to stay safe or keep the other person happy with you. And this fear, it hijacks those qualities and tries to convince you that you're not being the kind best version of yourself you want to be by not giving it to this person. Where did all that go? It's like they're not the same. And I can't disrespect and mistreat the person I want to be in a healthy relationship by distorting it and allowing it to be misused and corrupted and twisted in an unhealthy relationship. But, in order to deal with this situation, you have to set boundaries. You have to say, I can't be open. I can't shower the person with praise or generosity or what this all did is me think about this. I remember earlier I had so much trouble sorting through all these thoughts, and I don't mean to leave so much dead air, but I actually had to ask Copilot. I was just in so much stress that I couldn't think it through, but I knew I wanted to think it through, so I asked Copilot if it could help me sort of crystallize and come up with something clearer on what it is that I'm trying to say. And it gave me this, which pretty much describes what I was trying to get at. What you're describing is one of the most complicated parts of recovering from an emotionally unsafe dynamic. You had to learn healthy skills for the wrong reasons, and now you're trying to figure out how to keep the skills without keeping the fear. You learned healthy behaviors in an unhealthy environment. You learned to hold back generosity, protect your time, set limits, and not give endlessly. But you learned them because someone exploited your generosity, consumed your time, punished your openness, and took advantage of your giving nature. So the origin was painful, but the skills themselves are good. It's like learning to swim because someone pushed you into deep water. And this here was my own wording, but it used it, so that much I'm grateful for. And this is what I said. It was, when dealing with the behavior, the narcissistic behavior, I have to hold back generosity. I have to learn how to prioritize my time. And then I realized how I learned it. And in this case, I'm referring to how I learned generosity in the first place. How I learned those behaviors that are taken advantage of. How I learned it in the first place was always in a system that was against me. In a system that was always designed to take advantage of me. So I learned of some iteration, or what that means, what I was trying to get at is, I learned of some iteration or concept of generosity. I was taught generosity in a system, in a structure that was made to take advantage of that generosity. And so I didn't know it could look any other way. I was taught selflessness in a system where it was always meant to be transformed into self-destructive self-sacrifice. There's a better word for it, I know. Pathological altruism. Martyr complex, codependency, self-abandonment. That's pretty close. I know I've seen a better word for it somewhere before, but self-neglect? Maybe that was it. But, and then I wrote, I know even when I'm in a healthy relationship one day, I know I can't lose the healthy selfishness that I have learned. And it said something like, healthy selfishness is not something you lose, it's something you integrate. It's knowing your limits, protecting your energy, valuing your time, not giving more than you can afford, letting your needs matter, and not sacrificing yourself just to keep the peace. Not sacrificing yourself to keep the peace. These aren't reactions to danger, they're foundations for healthy connection. In a healthy relationship, these boundaries don't disappear, they finally make sense. A lot of the times I try to imagine what a healthy relationship looks like, and I can feel it. And I can see other people who have it. And I pray that one day I can have that too. It's pretty much all I can think of for right now to talk about. I mean, I can think of other things to talk about. That's all the energy I have right now to speak. But I'll probably talk about more things. It doesn't even have to be things like this. It could be things I like, video games, writing, movies, books, some concept or idea I like or just want to talk about. But this is enough for now.